What's going on, everybody? We're back at Agwa Academy, and today we're talking about skateboard decks. So when you're choosing your skateboard deck, there's three main components you want to be thinking about. There's the width of the board, the wheelbase, and the nose and tail. So when you're trying to figure out which skateboard is right for you, basically it all just depends on what you want to use it for. So basically, if you have like a big yacht, like big old boat like this, it's gonna be super smooth and stable, but you can't really turn very quick. That's why we got little boards like this that are kind of like a short little kayak, so you can turn super quick, although it's not gonna be very stable when you're going super fast or long distance. So this little 725 right here is kind of more like a kid's first skateboard, because it's really tiny, almost like a toothpick. So even though you can like flip it and like tray flip it super quick, there's a lot of heel and toe hang on here. It wouldn't be the best board for someone that's older than like 6 or 7. Also within the width of the board, you have the concave. So that's when it kind of bows into the middle like this. And it's made to kind of cup your feet onto the board so it doesn't slip off. And for when you're doing flip tricks, it kind of grabs your toes or whichever part of your foot is flipping the board to kind of get that extra flippage going on the board. And you can see this board is a mellow concave, so it's not as steep of a concave, whereas this black label board has a super steep concave where it dips down in the middle a lot. If you really want your feet to be cupped onto that deck and not slip off. And Baker is known for having mellow concave decks where it's not as steep in the middle, which is kind of more like an old school deck. Because if you look at this old Palo Peralta deck, it's just a flat piece of wood. There is zero concave on there. And that's how old school boards used to be. There are just no concave at all. But as people kind of got more into flip tricks and stuff like that, they got more into the concave decks. So the concave can kind of grab your feet, make it easier for flip tricks. And that is going to be the width of your board. The second component you want to be thinking about is the wheelbase. The wheelbase is basically measuring from one truck to the other truck on the inside holes. So say for this big guy, if I was going to measure this wheelbase, if I started on the closer ones, it's around 24.5 inch wheelbase, and then I could even go to the farther holes and it can go up to even 26 or a 27 inch wheelbase. So that's the cool thing about these type of decks, whereas they have different holes on there, so you can choose your wheelbase depending on if you want more of a tourney board or more of a stable like yacht or a big boat. So if you go back to this Alien Workshop deck, which is like your average skateboard, 825 width, we also have a pretty average wheelbase. It's around 14.5 inches. Most skateboards are going to be around 14 to 15 inch wheelbase, and that is going to be the wheelbase of your skateboard deck. So for the third component of your skateboard, that's going to be your nose and your tail. So when the nose and tail kind of lift up like this, they call those the kicks. And the kicks on the nose and tail each have their own purpose. So for the tail, if you want to change direction, you can push down on your tail, lifting up the nose, and then turn your board in what's called a tic-tac. If you want to check out our tic-tac video on Agwa Academy, you can check that video out. So typically with the skateboard, your nose is going to be longer than your tail, so it keeps your front foot on there, and when you're popping your trick, it makes it easier to get it up in the air because your tail is going to be a little lighter than the nose. And then if we go back to our old school Palo Peralta deck, this guy doesn't even have a nose. Like if you measured the nose, it's maybe like 2 inches. Let's see. It's 3 inches, and there's like no kick on it. And if you're gonna look at this Baker deck and this black label deck side by side, you can see the black label has much more of a concave and a lot steeper nose and tail. When you have a steeper tail, it takes longer for the tail to pop off the ground. So if you want to have a little more pop on your board, it might be a little better to have a flatter deck so your tail is kind of closer to the ground so it can pop off the ground quicker. And that is going to be the nose and tail of your skateboard deck. And with some skateboard decks, they actually imprint all the sizing on the top truck. So this Element deck is a pretty average skateboard deck. If I look at all the sizing, it's 825, which is the most basic size you can get for width. We got the total length of the board at 32 inches, which is pretty average. Most decks are around 31.5 to about 33 inches in total length. And then we have the nose, that's about 7 inches long up here. We have the tail, that's 6.5 inches. And we have the wheelbase, that's 14.3 inches. This deck, you don't even need your tape measure. It's just all imprinted right on the board, so it makes it a lot easier. And when you're at the skate shop, you might even come across a deck like this. This is a welcome deck, which is known for having crazy shapes like this. And it's just kind of fun to have certain sections of the board longer or shorter. So you can see this part of the deck where your back foot would be is kind of longer, so you can kind of rest your foot on there. And you kind of got like a shovel nose, and the tail's kind of squared off. So maybe if you're doing tray flips, your toes can kind of grab this part right here where it's shaped, so it makes it easier to kind of scoop and get under it. And it's kind of cool with this deck where there's 2 different wheelbase settings. It kind of changes the game up a little bit if you're bored of like your normal popsicle deck, which is what they call these, whereas the nose and tail are kind of shaped like a popsicle. So thanks for watching the last entry in our series on how to pick out the parts for your skateboard at your local skate shop. Make sure to like and subscribe and check out all the other Agwa Academy videos, and I'll catch you in the next one.